Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this major workshop on Cyber Resilience Act and Horizontal Standards. I am Mónica Sanzo, and I am Director of International Relations in UNE. And on behalf of the Spanish Association for Standardization, it is my pleasure to serve you today as moderator. Please be welcome those participants joining us in person here in Madrid today, and of course, those of you joining us online. Today's workshop will be a landmark in the standardization of cybersecurity, joining together industry leaders, policymakers, and technical experts with the goal of shaping the future of digital product security. Before we start, let me briefly outline the agenda of the day. We will start with the opening remarks, followed by presentations from key stakeholders, including representatives of the Spanish Ministry of Digital Transformation, the European Commission, and CEN and CENELEC. After that, it will be the time for the interactive workshop focusing on the practical application of generic security requirements through the DINUI case study. Without any further delay, it is my great pleasure to introduce our opening speaker, Javier García, General Director of UNE. He played a key role in establishing UNE as a leader in cybersecurity standardization to comply with European regulatory schemes. Javier brings the strategic vision linking national interest with the European regulation and supporting standards. And he fosters the European regulation in the Spanish industry together with the standards, with the relevant stakeholders. And he is always focusing on getting involved all the stakeholders in developing standards. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcome Javier García.
Yes. Cuántas cosas dices, Mónica. Good morning. Buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos a Madrid. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Madrid. I hope you had a coffee. I hope you... How many of you are from outside Madrid, from outside Spain? Please raise your hands. So several. Thank you. Good. So welcome to Madrid. To those from Madrid, pues buenos días también, claro que sí. I hope you had a good coffee out there. I hope you had the time to go for a walk, enjoy the city. This is my neighborhood in particular. I was talking with someone. This is the neighborhood where I grew up. My mother still lives a couple of streets down there. I might go for a coffee after we finish here. So I'm really happy that we're hosting this event here, not only in my city, in my neighborhood. Welcome to this workshop on the Cyber Resilience Act and the corresponding horizontal standards. Let me start with some special thanks to the Ministry of Digital Transformation, INCIBE, the Institute for Cyber Security, the European Commission, CEN, CENELEC, and the cybersecurity experts that are going to be with us today, and of course, representatives from industry, different perspectives of industry who at the end of the day are the real users, not to say the sufferers of the regulation, but the ones that will have to learn to use the standards that will support the deployment of this regulation. The workshop, as you might have seen in the invitation, offers a unique opportunity to better understand the key elements of the regulation and to participate in discussions with other experts to influence the future of cybersecurity and resilience in Europe through the horizontal standards being developed to support the regulation. I like very much this type of arrangements of rooms because this is really when people can talk to each other and understand and go deep into the issues that are not so clear on the day-to-day. So I really hope that there is this rich debate in the tables. The workshop, on the one hand, will give an overview of the Cyber Resilience Act, highlighting, that's the purpose, the key role of standards, of standardization, and the way forward for their implementation. It will provide a comprehensive understanding of how standards can effectively mitigate risks enhance the cybersecurity posture, and ensure that products and services are aligned with the legal expectations of the regulation. And of course, the end purpose, as I mentioned, is clearly to support industry to better understand how the regulation is relevant to them and how they will be able to ensure compliance with that regulation. Let me share with you just some very recent elements that we came up with in research in Spain on the economic benefits of standardization. Just in the month of July, the Ministry of Industry published a report in which it indicated, the research said that standards and standardization contribute 14.7% to the average annual growth of the Spanish GDP. 14.7% of the growth of the GDP is related to standards and standardization. So what we do here, what all this community does together, does have a real impact, positive impact in the market. This impact translates into a contribution of more than 140 billion over the last 4 decades. So yes, of course, this is technical, but this is market impact. And we're talking about real consequences and impact for organizations that have to implement these regulations. That's why it's so important that the standards that are being developed are developed putting that in mind. I mentioned this report, but I mention it not only for those figures, but because it includes a set of recommendations also at the end of the report that make perfect sense with this workshop here today. The main recommendation that I have in my mind from this report talks about the importance to ensure that SMEs have an easier life to both participate in the standards development processes, but also have an easier way to implement the standards so that they can show to the stakeholders that they comply and that it doesn't cost them a fortune really to implement those standards in terms of consultancy, certifications, etc., etc. So this is where what you are doing here today makes sense. How to ensure that the standards to be developed consider the point of view of SMEs, which is the majority of companies that are going to be impacted by this regulation, while at the same time, we already think on the development of those standards in a way that it makes it not impossible for those organizations to implement those standards, how we can make their life easier. And we don't do this just the standards organization. It's not just Monica and myself, we sit on a table and we draft the standards. You are seeing it here today. This is in the essence of what people very easily mention as public-private partnership. This is what it really is. This is really a public-private partnership. We have the European Commission that sends the standards organizations in Europe, send and Senelec a standardization request. Hey guys, please develop standards on this and this and this and these topics to support the deployment of this regulation so that we make the life easier of industry and we get the maximum potential of the internal market of the European Union. This public-private partnership is the result of years, decades of good work together between the authorities and the private sector. And it's not in any way, it's on the basis of the values of the European Union. Values like openness, like transparency, like consensus. All parties around the table, all parties around the table, and that is industry, that's authorities, that's technological centers, that's research institutes, the universities, the users, all parties around the table to ensure that the end product, those standards, are really suitable and the best tool to ensure that the regulation gets the intended purpose that it is looking for. This workshop as you will see, showcases this European vision for collaborative standardization. And what you are here today is representatives from, as I said, European Commission, cybersecurity authorities, technical experts, industry practitioners, all of us together creating these solutions. I finish now. I would finish again with some recalling some expressions of gratitude again to the European Commission, Sensenelec, the Ministry of Digital Transformation, our European partners, for their collaborative approach to this complex challenge. We'd also like to thank our national partners, also considering DINUI. Thank you very much for your contribution, really for making this tangible and understanding what we're talking about, the impact of this, for the involvement in the development of this workshop. Of course, to all of you, especially those that have come from outside Madrid, outside Spain, and especially, if you allow me, especially to my team, the people of UNE, the Spanish Standards Organization, several of them in that corner over there that have done a great job, a big effort put to ensure that this is prepared in the best way, and hopefully will provide you what you came looking for, and a fruitful discussion, enriching exchange of ideas, and hopefully help us push the development and the deployment of these standards to support the Cyber Resilience Act. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Javier, for these insightful opening remarks and for emphasizing the role of UNE in the development of this initiative and these standards. Our next speaker, Javier Augusto Gil Ruiz, is the director of the Cybersecurity Division of Digital Transformation at the Spanish Ministry for Digital Transformation. He leads the supervision of digital services and participates in market surveillance of security for products with digital elements. Javier drives cyber resilient efforts for critical infrastructures, including cloud, 5G, and submarine cables. He works in the coordination mechanisms for CRA, implementation, and the regulatory oversight that will support Spain companies in achieving compliance. Please welcome Javier Augusto Gil Ruiz.
Thank you. Well, let's throw some light into the dark matter of the Spanish regulatory framework for cybersecurity. Next slide, please. That's it. How Spain organizes cybersecurity from a regulatory point of view can be structured in three aspects: the strategy, the public sector framework, and the rules for the private sector. The strategy first. Spain's national cybersecurity strategy comes from and is aligned with the EU cybersecurity strategy. It also sits inside, it's a part of Spain's national security strategy. In other words, EU objectives are translated into our whole of government approach. The strategy makes cybersecurity a national priority across all sectors. It creates a structured cooperation between public and private stakeholders, and it defines clear governance to the National Cybersecurity Council. Second, the public sector framework, the ENS, the Spain's Esquema Nacional de Seguridad, is our national cybersecurity baseline for public sector information systems. It's both a standard and a schema somehow. It is established by royal decree, and it sets risk-based controls for e-government. Compliance is mandatory for all public administrations, central, regional, and local, and plus the public bodies and agencies. It is also mandatory for all private contractors and public providers for public services that process, host, or deliver digital services. In practice, many private companies in Spain have adopted the ENS principles because they give a clear common language for controls, assurance, and accountability when they work with the public sector. Well, and third, the private sector rules, which are basically driven by the European Union. The European Union structures the digital market around the two big groups classical in economy, goods and services. Goods, that is products with digital elements, both software and hardware, are covered, as you will know, by the Cyber Resilience Act, which sets essential cybersecurity requirements for products and uses the EU's new legislative framework, which underpins the market of goods in the whole European Union, with a CE marking, conformity assessment, and market surveillance by authorities. Services, both digital and non-digital, but digital dependent, are covered by the NIS2 directive. This directive raises the bar for many sectors. It requires risk management, incident reporting, and oversight for essential and important entities. The NIS2 greatly expands the number of operators that must comply, reflecting how deeply digital technology supports our economy and society. Alongside these two big framework horizontal laws, we have sector-specific laws that, as we see here, remain fully applicable. As to give a few examples, critical services, formerly known as critical infrastructures, have their own protection regime. The financial sector follows a specific cybersecurity framework, which is DORA. Trust services, as you know, are governed by EIDAS. Data sharing and data intermediaries are addressed by instruments like the Data Act. And of course, telecommunications have their own regulatory framework. These sectoral regimes do not follow this clean line between products and services. They often span software, hardware, and service obligations at the same time, which is normal because that's how reality works. The real systems combine all three. So in the big picture, Spain connects these three layers in a coherent way. The strategy gives direction and governance. The ENS provides a strong baseline for the public sector and for suppliers that work with it. And EU law, governed by both CRA and NIS2, sets modern harmonized rules for products and services across the economy, complemented by sector-specific regimes. Together, they strive to create clarity for manufacturers, service providers, and public bodies. Well, here we have the plethora of Spanish cybersecurity authorities. Spain's cybersecurity governance is anchored in the National Security Council and its National Cybersecurity Council, with the National Department of Security, the DSN, as providing a whole of government coordination. This top layer sets direction and ensures policy coherence across ministries and agencies. At ministerial level, we have, of course, the Ministry of Defense, which covers military cyberspace through the Joint Cyber Command, and the National Intelligence Center, the National Cryptologic Center, the CCN, which sets the standard for the cybersecurity of the public sector and its providers. My ministry, the Ministry for Digital Transformation and the Civil Servants, leads civil and digital policy through the State Secretariat for Telecommunications and Digital Infrastructure, CITELECO. And it also sets national capabilities for digital citizens and businesses via the National Cybersecurity Institute, INCIBE. The Agency for Digital Administration underpins the public sector side, and the Ministry of Interior addresses protection of essential services through the National Center for Protection of Critical Infrastructure and the Cybersecurity Coordination Office. At the more operational level, we have the agencies that depend on these ministries, which are all linked by the Standing Cybersecurity Committee, which links the policy tier with the technical responders. Spain operates multiple certs, CCerts aligned to mission. ESP DevCert, which is the CCert for defense, CCN Cert, which is the CCert for the public sector, and in ciberseguridad, which is the CCert for citizens and companies, which are complemented by regional CCerts and private CCerts. This layered model maps neatly onto key domains such as defense, public sector, 5G, citizens and companies, strategic services, and critical infrastructures, so that incident response and preparedness sit with the right authority. The Cyber Resilience Act is a transformative single market regulation. It calls for a coordinated national response that fits the new legislative framework of the EU and Spain's existing institutions. As to its governance and legal alignment, well, a sanctioning regime is mandated by law as required by Article 65 of the CRA, and it will be issued. A royal decree will be issued which will designate the Market Surveillance Authority and the notifying authority, building on current capabilities across ministries and on the precedent from the Radio Equipment Directive Delegated Act. Coordination protocols will align the Market Surveillance Authority with the CCN, as we have seen, which is the National Certification Authority under the EU Cybersecurity Act and notifying authority for the EUCC, and within CIBE with its laboratory and testing capabilities underpinning the Market Surveillance Authority and the notifying authority. This notifying authority will support a domestic ecosystem of conformity assessment bodies, fostering the growth of Spanish candidates for notification. Technical guidance and the necessary conformity assessment infrastructure will make compliance practical. The enforcement of market surveillance in practice will cover the full product lifecycle with proactive checks and reactive measures, with cross-border cooperation via EU tools such as EISMEA and SafetyGate. Post-market duties, vulnerability handling, timely security and updates, and transparency will be a consistent focus. And as this is the first time that a market surveillance authority must enforce obligations beyond the point when the sale is made. Standards are the backbone of the system. Through UNE, Spain will take part in Sense and LEC and the relevant ETSIF work, prioritizing horizontal standards that translate the CRA's essential requirements into testable criteria. Mirror committees and technical working groups will channel the Spanish industry's voice and provide early guidance for planning. The objective of the Spanish government is a predictable, standards-driven path that protects consumers and strengthens the single market. As for support for Spanish companies, Spain's intentions extend beyond the regulatory compliance for practical industry support. Let me be very clear for clarity. My following remarks describe options that could be considered, not promises. Any political action depends on the political will of the government and on legal, budgetary, and coordination conditions. For guidance and awareness, we envision to prepare CRA implementation guides tailored to Spanish manufacturers. Sector-specific workshops might address concrete challenges. Multi-language resources could help companies of every size follow the same roadmap. As for technical assistance, possible measures we envision include SME-focused support, particularly important for Spain, facilitated access to assessment and testing facilities by leveraging national infrastructure, and non-binding certification pathway orientation to clarify routes toward CRA conformity. As for capacity buildings, our option might include training on security by design, professional development on CRA requirements for technical staff, and partnerships that connect manufacturers with cybersecurity expertise. As for innovation support, exploration could cover CRA-aligned R&D funding, proportionate public procurement, levers where permissible, and coordination to help firms access EU programs such as Digital Europe and Horizon Europe. To be precise, these are possibilities, not commitments. If you are waiting to hear something concrete, at present, the most concrete channel available is EU cascade funding under the European Cybersecurity Competence Center, the ECCC framework. In Spain, in CIBE, serves as the National Coordination Center, NCCES. This means CIBE can take part by promoting and signposting relevant EU open calls, helping Spanish SMEs and manufacturers find and access those opportunities, and connecting them with the consortia that distribute the vouchers and grants. The funding itself is awarded by the EU projects running each call under the project's rules. Through this NCC role, CIBE can facilitate access to calls that support CRA-related work, always subject to each call eligibility, evaluation, and budget. We have calls right now. CY, SSD, and Secure are cascade funding streams under the ECCC ecosystem that can target CRA-related readiness for products with digital elements. For example, SME vouchers, which are at around 30,000 euros at 50% co-funding, with a first call, which is indicated right now for September of 2025, while complementary pen test and risk monitoring calls have been offered up to 200,000 euros per call at 50% for penetration testing and vulnerability assessments during 2025. INCIBE participates in this as Spain's National Coordination Center and is a CYSSD partner, so it can signpost Spanish SMEs to these EU open calls, which are available right now. The awards themselves are pre-made by the project consortia under each call's rules. So, if you are developing products with digital elements and need to accelerate CRA readiness, the ECCC Cascade Funding Channel is the most concrete path right now we can point you to today, with INCIBE acting as our national coordination point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Javier, for this comprehensive overview of the legal framework in cybersecurity here in Spain, and for highlighting the crucial support that the ministry will provide to the national industry. Now we will turn to the European Commission perspective with a speaker who has been directly involved in shaping the Cyber Resilience Act from the very beginning. Joining us online from Brussels, it is Felipe Mourão. He is the Cybersecurity Policy Officer at the European Commission Directorate General for Communication, Networks, Connect and Technology, DG Connect. And he will give us the easy perspective on the CRI, including the development of horizontal standards, the assessment processes, the criteria that will define compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Felipe Mourão.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be with you today. Sorry that I couldn't join in person, so I hope you have a great event. I know that the agenda is very interesting. I just want to make sure that the slides are also ready. All right. I see them now, so I hope that that's okay. So, good morning. So, my name is Felipe Mourão. I'm a policy officer in DG Connect, the Cybersecurity Policies Unit, working on the Cyber Resilience Act. And so I'm here today to present to you a little bit what the Cyber Resilience Act is and its how it gives us a bit of the guiding light on what we need to do for the CRA standard. So next slide, please. So in a nutshell, the Cyber Resilience Act is about addressing the vulnerabilities in our products and ensuring that we can meet concrete secure outcomes. It also, in the next slide, it uses the new legislative framework with the CE marking to do that. So that means it defines high-level requirements through the legislation, and manufacturers can mostly self-attest by placing the CE marking. In the next slide, we can see sort of the main elements of this family of legislation. So this is the model legislation that is followed for most EU product legislation. The general idea is that the obligations cover manufacturers, distributors, and importers throughout the product lifecycle. That includes, of course, the vulnerability handling requirements after placement on the market. And the legislation, these high-level cybersecurity requirements, are supported by harmonized standards that give manufacturers an idea of how to implement the essential requirements, what is actually expected for compliance. And these standards, if they meet the requirements, they receive a legal effect, which is called the presumption of conformity. So presumption of conformity does not mean that if you follow the standard, you're automatically assured to comply, but it means that there has been a previous discussion on what good compliance should look like, and that is kind of a validated document that says, okay, in theory, if you meet this, then we need to show that there is a problem rather than it having to be a conversation that starts from scratch each time. The Cyber Resilience Act also is a risk-based approach. So that means in general, you only need to treat the risks that actually exist on your product. And to the extent that they exist, you need to always mitigate them. So this is an important link also to the intended purpose and reasonably foreseeable use of your product. And then there's different conformity assessment categories that apply to different classes of products. Which means that there's an element of proportionality. As I said, most products are allowed to self-assess, but some products have to go to third-party conformity assessment. The legislation also has reporting obligations. That's for actively exploited vulnerabilities and severe incidents. And in the end, the enforcement of the legislation is done at member state level through the market surveillance authorities. Next slide, please. So in scope of the Cyber Resilience Act, it's quite a broad scope. It's all products with digital elements. That includes both hardware products and software products, as well as the remote data processing solutions of smart products. So the backend stuff is also covered, even if the backend is actually outside of the organization and it's using some kind of public cloud infrastructure, that is still legally in the scope of the product, and therefore it's important that the manufacturer always takes some responsibility when implementing, for instance, cloud-based solutions. Next slide, please. There's also some important exclusions from scope, in particular what's called here non-commercial products, and here it's really a nod to the non-commercial open source projects and products that underlie a lot of the software infrastructure of our modern world. There's also an exclusion for pure services. So these are usually conceptualized as web-based offerings, things like websites. When something is a standalone SaaS that is not actually tied to a hardware product or another form of product with digital elements, that would be excluded from the scope of the CRA, even if some types of service providers may actually be covered by the NIS2 directive as part of important or essential entities and critical infra owners. But as products, the service aspect of a software as a service is out of scope. But of course, when it's tied to a product, it's called the remote data processing. So when it has a hardware product or a software product that you can download and install on your device, then the remote aspects are called remote data processing. They're included in the product. If it's only a remote process, only a remote service, then it would be excluded from scope. And finally, there's a number of outright exclusions from sectoral legislation that offer already some level of cybersecurity. So that's looking specifically at the automotive sector, medical devices and in vitro, certified aeronautic equipment and marine equipment. Next slide, please. And on this slide, you see a kind of a timeline of what it means sort of to comply with the CRA and the main aspects of the compliance lifecycle in the NLF. And it's sort of the usual thing that you'll see for these legislations is you start with the risk assessment, you identify the requirements that apply based on the risks, and then you demonstrate them through the appropriate conformity assessment regime. Once you go into the market, there's the placement on the market, starts the maintenance phase, where you have both vulnerability handling and reporting obligations. And finally, after the product lifetime has expired, you no longer need to do vulnerability handling, but you still need to continue reporting any actively exploited vulnerabilities or severe incidents that become aware of, that the manufacturer becomes aware of. Next slide, please. And so here we have the sort of description of the conformity assessment categories. So as I said, there's a default category that can self-assess, and then there's two important and critical categories that essentially what differentiates them is that the critical category in future may be subject to mandatory certification, and this is a link to the Cybersecurity Act and the European Cybersecurity Certification Framework. Whereas for the important products, there's two categories. Class 1 is allowed to self-assess if it has a harmonized standard, and Class 2 would still always need to do third-party conformity assessment through a notified body. Next slide, please. So all of this is to say that the Cyber Resilience Act offers a kind of comprehensive framework for product security in the EU market as part of the market access, market entrance rules. It entered into force in December 2024, so that was 9 months ago. So that's 9 months out of a 3-year process of transition, which means we're about 25% of the way. So the CRA implementation is therefore now fully in progress. We are working with the European standardization organizations to develop the harmonized standards, and of course that's what today is all about. We're also working on the technical descriptions of the important and critical products, as well as the terms and conditions for CSERTs to withhold notifications. Both of these are implementing in the Delegated Act that are due by December 2025, so that's 1 year from the entry into application. And finally, we're also working with ENISA, who's setting up the single reporting platform that will underpin the reporting obligations that kick in next September, in about a year's time. Next slide, please. A few more things that we are working on as part of the CRA implementation, just to give you still the idea of the big picture. So we're working on legal guidance to support implementation. So there's a number of topics that have been identified. In fact, there's an article in the CRA that explicitly asks the Commission to provide guidance on some of these topics. That includes the remote data processing solutions. Here you see it, RDPS, the open source software and open source stewards that are created by the CRA also require some guidance. There's also questions on how to define the support period, what is the interplay with other union legislation, the concept of substantial modification, and also the SME measures that the CRA refers to. There's another slide on that after. We're also seeing, still previous slide, yes, thanks. So just to also mention that, as I said, the member states also play the key role in the enforcement of the CRA, and they are now setting up, defining their notifying authorities and the market surveillance authorities. So these will be taking care of the notifying authorities are the ones who notify the CABs, the conformity assessment bodies, and the market surveillance authorities do the enforcement on the market. And finally, there's been a CRA expert group set up. So this is a multi-stakeholder group that serves to advise the Commission on the implementation of the CRA. And there's been a number of meetings held already, both of the whole CRA expert group and of specific work strands. And the next meeting of the expert group is due on 22nd of October. Next slide, please. Okay, so then on SME support, it's just something that we particularly want to highlight because there are a number of initiatives. Not only are there support measures in the Article 33, where member states are meant to organize awareness raising and to support the testing and conformity assessment of activities of SMEs. There's also a reference to regulatory sandboxes to be created, and I hope that we will see some activity in this area. As well as an empowerment for the Commission to come out with simplified technical documentation template for micro and small companies. Apart from the Cyber Resilience Act, there's also funding support under the Digital Europe program. And in particular, there's three waves of projects that we want to highlight to make sure everybody's aware. So CyberStand, excuse me. CyberStand has been set up to support participation of experts in standardization activities, and they have grants for experts who wish to participate. So take a look at that if you want to get involved in the standards. The Secure project is meant to give third-party funding to SMEs who are going to work on adapting their processes to make them CRA compliant. So if you're an SME and you want some financial support to help to transfer to do the change of processes in inside your company, please take a look at that process because I think that the calls for SMEs will soon be out. And finally, there's also a number of projects working on developing or updating tooling to help companies ensure the security outcomes on their project and on their processes. So there's a number of calls, I think some 6 or 7 different projects working on different tooling, covering different aspects of compliance that can help and are specifically looking on how to support the CRA compliance. So we hope that this is a package that will also take some steps in the way of supporting the compliance and market players' efforts towards adapting their processes for the CRA. Next slide, please. So when we come then to standardization, just again, the big picture of this is the harmonized standards and the standardization request that has been adopted by the Commission and has been accepted now by the ESO since February of this year. The idea is that the standards would build on the international and European standards that exist. So this is a nod, of course, to all of the international frameworks from ISO, IC, or other industrial alliances, but also the work done at European level, for instance, for the Radio Equipment Directive, where horizontal cybersecurity standards have already been produced. And so a lot of conversations have been happening over the last few years and even decades. And it's really important that we build on that existing state of the art. In order to support that, the standardization request is separated into sort of two layers of standards. The first is the horizontal standards that kind of are meant to give a structure and support an overall coherence to the work. And the second is a set of vertical standards, meaning product-specific standards that can actually go into the detail. Because I think one of the main lessons learned in the recent years has been that having a single standard with just horizontal provisions for all the different products out there is not really enough to actually give manufacturers the certainty of what they need to do. And also it doesn't make it very easy to do the enforcement by market surveillance authorities. So the vertical standards are meant to overcome this by having a smaller scope, makes it a lot easier to deep dive into the topic of the product and really define what should be the use cases, what are the risks and the threats associated to it, how do we define mitigations for this, and how do we do testing so that this can be easily demonstrable. That's very much the structure of the work that we're doing now. These vertical standards, of course, you can imagine there's a lot of products with digital elements in the scope of the CRA, so we could not have a vertical standard for each product out there. We had to prioritize. And of course, we've prioritized the important and critical products of the CRA, not only because they're important and critical for the European ICT infrastructure, but also because those are the products that will need to go through third-party conformity assessment. And therefore, it's important that those products in particular have a harmonized standards that will help them to have the conversations with markets, with the conformity assessment bodies. But it is important to note that this is really seen as just the sort of first building blocks of a new ecosystem of product security standards. That is to say that in the future, with future standardization requests, there could be other vertical standards covering new and more product categories, so that any manufacturer who gets together and prepares a standard can then benefit from this presumption of conformity, meaning you front load the effort of the compliance conversation, you do it in consensus with the other players of your sector, and you propose it for discussion with the regulator, and therefore you are investing a lot of effort so that by the time you want to do the actual certificate or by the time you want to place it on the market, you've already had all of your discussions through the standardization process, and therefore you have a lot more legal certainty about what is expected of you. That's very much the idea of the standards. Next slide, please. In this slide, we have just a quick overview of the deliverables that are requested in the standardization request. So I think the horizontal standards, there's 15 deliverables for the risk-based approach, the different essential requirements, and the vulnerability handling. And then another 26 standards covering the important and critical product classes that I mentioned until now. Next slide, please. I'm coming up to my last slide, with a visual representation of sort of this kind of architecture of the standards, the pyramid we call it, and also the deadlines that are there. So we have the horizontal standards for the risk-based approach and for vulnerability handling that are set out for next August. we have the in October 2027, the product agnostic technical measures, which I believe is what we're here to discuss today. So this is actually the standard that has the most time because it is fully horizontal and it is not going to give presumption of conformity. So it's not sufficient for the moment for manufacturers to rely on this standard alone. Nonetheless, it will give a lot of market clarity to all the players in the supply chain. And finally, you have at the bottom of the pyramid the actual type C standards, that is, the standards that are going to be product specific and will actually aim to achieve the presumption of conformity with the needed granularity. That is, they actually are going to identify the risks, propose the mitigations and the testing that is needed in order to be able to demonstrate that the product meets all of the outcomes that are needed for the CRA compliance. And I just want to point out the gray bar at the bottom of the pyramid. Sorry, in the previous slide. Just at the bottom of the pyramid, you have the gray bar to the right, where you see the possibility of additional standardization requests in the future covering additional product categories. So this is really important, even though there is the horizontal product agnostic technical measures of the type B standards that will be defined in the PT2 draft. What is very important is that for presumption of conformity, products are expected to come forward and develop actual product-specific standards where they can be clear about their use cases, their risks, their mitigations, and their tests. So that's very much what the gray box there is already suggesting. With that, I think I've covered my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And I just really want to wish everyone a great day today. I understand you have a really good lineup. So thank you very much to UNE and to all of the stakeholders who are supporting this work.
Thank you, Felipe, for that broad overview of the Commission approach and implementation of the CRA, and for outlining the regulatory framework timeline that will form the basis of the standardization efforts. I would like to take the opportunity to remind you, all of you, the Spanish colleagues and stakeholders, that you are more than welcome to join the Mirror Technical Committee here at national level to follow all the standards that Felipe just mentioned. And that gives me also the opportunity to come to the next speaker that represents the technical heart of the European standardization, Ioannis Kouroumoutsiadis. It is the project manager at Sensenelec Management Center. He's fully involved in the activities in the electrotechnology sector and related projects to cybersecurity, such as CyberStand and Stand for CR. So please welcome Ioannis.
Thank you very much. This is close. Blah, blah, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Indeed, my name is difficult because it's Greek, so you have to bear with me on that. All right. Let's see. Second, please. Okay. Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is Ioannis Kouroumoutsiadis, Yannis for short. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you very much to the previous speakers that set up the scene perfectly for you to now see on a high level how standardization actually happens. And of course, a big thank you to the participants that came here today, but also the participants that are online. So, as I said, today I will give you an introduction to standardization and to the workshop objectives for the workshop to come after the coffee break. All right, so who are we? SEN, SEN, and Lekanetsi are the three ESOs, the European Standardization Organizations, and they are recognized as such by Regulation 1025. Now, what is a standardization request? A standardization request is a formal document, as you heard already, that is issued by the Commission and is sent to us, the three ESOs, asking to revise or update harmonized standards or any kind of standards, but in this situation, harmonized standards to support EU policies or legislation. Now you might ask, what is a harmonized standard, or what is different from other standards? So a harmonized standard is a European standard developed by recognized ESOs, all right, and is published in the official journal of the EU. It is created, as I said, following a request from the Commission to us, the ESOs, and also member states, if they have any conflicting standards, they can withdraw them in order to adopt the harmonized standard. Now, their use is voluntary, and that's very important for you to know, that their use is actually voluntary, and the industry is free to choose whichever else other method they want to show compliance to the mandatory legal requirements that exist. However, as you might also know, the harmonized standards offer an industry consensus, a very clear, recognized path to demonstrate compliance. So the industry gathered and they have made an excellent work, and with consensus, which is a very important word that we also heard today from Mr. Garcia, they create the standards to show legal requirements. Now, the CRA is the first of its kind of regulation, and oops, sorry, let's go back. All right, it's the first of its kind of regulation, so no standards currently exist for that, that specifically cover actually the CRA essential requirements, which is the reason that we are gathered here today and of this CRA standardization request. Now, real quick, how is the whole thing working? Basically, the member states and the Commission, they gathered and cooperate to identify the needs of the standardization request. Then they create the standardization request, which reflects on the regulatory objectives, and they send it to the three ESOs, SEN, and ENETSI. Then they also assess it, they reject it or they accept it, and since they accept it, the whole work starts. Now, this is a very high-level diagram of how the work is actually happening because it's deep and it requires time. So, and they draft the harmonized standard, and then the harmonized standards are published in the official journal of the European Union, and thus products can put the CE marking on them that shows presumption of conformity, that basically the product, presumably the product conforms to EU legislation. The presentation will follow the three next points: what standards are requested and thus developed, what is a work program, what are the timelines. Now, the standardization request, you can find it in the eNorm platform as M Mandate 606 CRA. This request was accepted by us, and the ESOs then accepted the request, as I said, and committed to a work program. But first, let me talk to you about the request standards. Felipe from the Commission already said to us that there are different products and class products that the CRA covers, and then the work has horizontal standards. I will show you later in the diagram in a board which standards those are. So we have the horizontal standards that they must be thought as a building block, let's say a baseline for vertical development. And then we have the vertical products, the vertical standards that are more product specific standards, as also Felipe mentioned. And you can see here that the vertical product, class 1 and class 2 standards are done by SEN, CENELEC, and ENETSI, whereas the vertical critical products are mostly done by SEN, CENELEC. So this is half of the work program because I couldn't put it in one slide. So it has basically 41 points, 41 requests. And you can see that we have the lines on the left. So every time we talk about a line, you know, line 1, you can also refer it as PT1, like project team 1, project team 2, project team 3. You see the SEN, CENELEC, ENETSI, this is responsible on the second column, the topics. And what I would like you to keep today is that from lines 1 until 15, we have the horizontal standards. Once again, the standards that are supposed to be thought as a building block for vertical development. And from 15 and 16 until 41, there are more points, as I said, until 41, we have the vertical standards. Now, a very important point is the correlation between the mandate, MC606, like the request, and the technical committees at SEN, CENELEC, and ENETSI. On the left, you will see on Annex 1, the requested standards by the Commission, or at least what the Commission wants to see. So what is a very important word right now, because on the left we have the what from the Commission, and on the right we have the how from the ESOs, how we will do it. So you will see, as I cannot read it right now, but you will see that the first point on the left has the same title on the right. So it directly reflects, the work program directly reflects on what the Commission wants to see. And now that's another very quick diagram of how the work is actually done. And the main word of the day, I think, should be consensus, because indeed every step has a consensus building on it. At the beginning, we have the proposal and evaluation and decision from ESOs for the standards, and then the whole drafting starts. It's full of consensus building, and that's why it's a very timely process. And then after there is a mature draft, let's say, of the standard, we have the public inquiry period in which everyone can pitch in with comments, and then the TCs, the technical committees responsible for the work, should consider those comments and approve the new standard that has happened now that the comments came in, and then we talk about publication. And in all of this, you have consensus building and lots of talk and decision, and people that are working in the working groups here already know that. And now, what is the expected timeline? In April, Senator Canetzi created the work program. Now we are at the heavy workload period in the sense that we are drafting standards, or we are aiming for mature draft of a standard, and that will happen until beginning of November, because then we have the dispatch to the inquiry, so the public inquiry comes in, and this will happen until May, and at the same time, comments will come in, drafts will be updated, and stuff like that. That's why you might say that we have time, because you see deadlines like, October 2026, you see 2027, but the time is actually pressuring. For example, PT1 and PT3, so lines number 1, lines number 3, have deliverables in August. But in general, there are other deadlines as well that you can see in the work program in links that I have put in my presentation, our presentation. And the focus of the workshop today, and Angelo will say even more things later, it's the generic and essential security requirements. So in the work program, lines 2 to 14. The workshop aims to give feedback on the PT2, so project team 2, line 2, until 14, so items 2 until 14 as well, by testing methods, by your input and insights. That's why I would encourage you to feel free to contribute to the conversations in any way possible. And there are no stupid questions, there is only smart questions, because they can be turned into feedback, and every contribution matters. And of course, Angelo will say more things about the rationale of the workshop later. And I think we have a coffee break afterwards, so I will not keep you anymore, and I would wish you to enjoy Madrid and the coffee break. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ioannis, for the detailed explanation of the standardization roadmap, as well as for the information for the workshop today. Now, as Ioannis said, it is time for the coffee break. So for those attending in person here, please join us in the designated area. And for those joining online, we will start again at 11:30 sharp. Please be all ready for the technical presentation delivered by Angelo and all the team that will give us the details for today's interactive workshop. Thank you so much.
The core of the event, the man of the hour, Angelo D'Amato. cybersecurity expert, renowned expert, and the founder of Vulner, a cybersecurity company. I will let you introduce yourself, Angelo. Please, big round of applause for the man of the hour.
Thank you so much. So do we have already the slide on? Perfect. So I will start with the introduction. I'm Angelo D'Amato, founder of Vulner. So you can go on the next slide. Or do I have it? I have it. Okay. So this is I want to introduce myself. So I'm the founder of Vulner. And of course, I'm 15 years of experience on cybersecurity for end-to-end assessment. And I'm a rapporteur for PT2, that is the focus of today on generic security requirement for CRA, but also on PT3, that is the vulnerability handling requirement. So, of course, all this event, of course, is sponsored. My role of rapporteur is sponsored from EFTA, European Commission, with the cyber stand, with the Stand for CR founding. And I'm very grateful also for this opportunity because allow me to found my own company and to start up my activity. So let's go with the agenda of today. So we will start with setting up a little bit of a context. So most of the context that we will have in the first slides until section 4, set up the context, CRA use case and example, security control and framework, is something that has already been mentioned before. And I'm trying to go a little bit faster on this because, of course, it's also part of the webinar that I did it on 8th of September. And I will want to focus more on the section 4 and 5, where I will go deep in what are the security control of PT2. And on section 6, where I will explain you the preparation content for the workshop, allowing to set up the context for Eva, that she is a representative from DNUI, and we will present together the product, a little bit the architecture, and what is the context, and set up the baseline for our workshop today. Let's start with setting up the context. In the slide, I collected a little bit of reference for what are the main content or the main reference that you may use to have basis on the Cyber Resilience Act, starting with the legislation, starting with the core knowledge about the NLF, new legislative framework, blue guide, and so on. So, the back. I need to learn how to handle this. So these are is a slide that the European Commission is using most of the time, and then was explained also by Felipe this morning before the break. And here you can see graphically what are the main activities that are included into the Cyber Resilience Act. You have the risk assessment, the product-related essential requirement, that is what we will do today, and all the activity of vulnerability handling and conformity assessment into the design and development phase. While you are designing your product, you need to select the right security control, align with your risk assessment. So you are doing the risk assessment, you highlight some of the risk, and then of course you need to select some mitigation control. When you select your mitigation control, you need to have all the motivation why you select a specific security control. You need to embed into your design, and then you need to evaluate. After that, you have all the maintenance phase that is, of course, mostly vulnerability handling requirement. This is the PT3 activities. And along with the reporting obligation that will not stay, that will stay after the product is going on the market, but will remain also after the end of support period. So the reporting obligation will stay also later. This is a slide that was already presented by Philippe. Here I just highlighted the project team 2, the work that we will do today, just to give you a visual link. I will not explain again the timeline and the deadline because it was already introduced by Felipe this morning. Here is the standardization request that also was introduced by Yanis earlier. And here I just wanted to give you a graphical means of what are the lines that are dedicated to different standards. We called in Sensenelec, we have 3 groups, PT1, Project Team 1, Project Team 2, and Project Team 3. And you can see that Project Team 1 on the risk assessment and so on is related to line 1 of the mandate, the standardization request. And we have PT2 that is from line 2 or line 14. And this is what we will cover today. And PT3 is the last line, line 15 for the vulnerability handling. This is a slide that we have in working group 9, just to give you an idea of what is the relation between this project team 1, 2, and 3, and also how to think about the relation on the horizontal that we are developing. As you can see, the PT1 is the standard that will collect all the high-level process and activity. So there you can find all the secure software development life cycle, what are the main activities that you need to have in place to have a secure product. You have all the minimum expectation of the activity that needs to be present. And you can imagine this is as a catch-all for all the activities and all the processes that you need to have in place, included the risk assessment. Of course, like I said before, when you are doing your risk assessment and you need to have mitigation control, you are referring to the project team, project 2. Project 2, that is what we will cover today, is a catalog of security control. Is not process-oriented like PT1, is product-oriented. So there you have technological control that needs to be included in your product. And of course, you are including this based on your risk assessment that you are defining PT1. So this is the relation between PT1 and PT2. Of course, then we have also PT3, that is another process and activities standard that is on how to handle vulnerability after the product is placed onto the market. So here we include all the maintenance for checking that your product is free of known vulnerabilities, and you have all the regular test activities and how the manufacturer needs to react or act when there is a vulnerability into the product. This is just a repetition of what I said before. So with all the main objective and deliverables, I put this slide this slide here just for you as a reference and to have it as a reference for when you are thinking about our standard. So this is just a slide that shows you why is important. So like I say, when you have a regulation to be a good regulation, and then of course, and not to be a suggestion, you need to have all the enforcement. So a regulation that is not enforced is just a suggestion. To have this enforcement, you have different roles that needs to play together. And we are seeing yourself, the manufacturers that are also today, so that you need to implement all the security control in place. You have the role of a notified body that is supporting. There are conformity assessment that are that support for the third-party assessment, and then they are giving guidance to manufacturer to have a more secure product on the market. And then, of course, we have also market surveillance that they need to carry out surveillance activity to make sure that everybody implement a minimum level of security. But how you can check what is the minimum level of security? You are checking through harmonized standard, and this is why it's important, the work that we are doing. And I think that also this morning, this was the main message of Javier that wanted to let you know. So, and why are important the harmonized standard? Let's start with the use case. I like this example. This is the same example used by Ben Cox, the convener of working group 9 for RED, and we can use it also for CRA. This, I don't know if you're familiar with my friend of Kyla. This was a smart toy from a company called Genesis that in 2014 won an award to be the most innovative toy in UK. And this was a fancy toy with communication, connection. The kid could interact and speak with the doll. So it was a connected smart toy. The problem is that there were first vulnerability that was discovered in 2015. And these were critical vulnerabilities. So anybody could connect to this toy without even authentication. So that was a big issue. And imagine you have a toy in the hand of your kids, and anybody can communicate, speak with your kids, listening to what he or she is saying. And of course, this was a little bit scary at the time. And it was even scarier because there was no regulation that could ban this product from the European market. The only country that was able to ban this product was Germany, because they used one regulation that they had, is the Spy Act. So they categorized this product as a spying device, and they were the only country in Europe that were able to ban. And this is the reason why the European Commission also pushed to speed up the activity for RED to activate Article 3.3D ENF, and they didn't wait for CRA because it took a long run for that. So this is the reason why regulation like CRA, Radio Equipment Directive, they are very, very important to protect us as a citizen, and then to have a more secure ecosystem. So this is another reason why it's important. So with regulation like CRA, so this would not have been happened, because every member state would have had a mean to ban this product, to recall, or to force the manufacturer to implement security control. This is just a kind of summary of what are the main security control issue that the product had. Like I said, there was a problem in secure by default and configuration, default password, so there was no password at all. And there was no authorized access. And so this was the main issue from cybersecurity that, of course, it became also a lack of safety. Other security issues that were there were related to data minimization, GDPR, privacy, because there were some problems with the user terms, sharing of the kids' secret, so the conversation, audio. And then there was also hidden market, because when the kids were speaking with the toy was sharing advertisement of Disney. Maybe they are a partner of the toy, and so there was also issue with hidden marketing. So that is not the only case. We had, I think that you're also familiar with other cases, like the famous Mirai IoT botnet attack that happened in August 2016. And this was a massive, was the first denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack, in which the zombie, or in which the device within the botnet were not classical computer, PC. There were IP cameras, there were smart fridge, there were all the internet connected devices that had the default password, and then the attacker, they scan the network, they enter into this device, and they use it as a massive botnet to attack Facebook, Netflix, and they took it down a lot of high-profile websites. And this started with an issue that was a missing of security by default configuration. All the products that were installed with the default password. And this is one of the provision of the Cybersecurity Act. So, and why is important to have basic security. So, and then we have also the famous Log4j. So there was a massive vulnerability that was a remote code execution on this. And this was discovered in December 2021. The importance of this vulnerability was from the fact that Log4j was in many products, but there were also manufacturers that were not aware that that library were used in logging functionality within their product. And why? Because not many manufacturers, they had in place a software bill of material, and so it was also difficult to highlight the presence of that component, and then, of course, of the vulnerability itself. And this is the reason why I highlighted the importance of security updates, and of course also on SBOM. So there are many security control framework that I will list in this slide, but I want also to start off what are the objectives of PT2. This is how, when we start our work within Sensenec, we also define what are the main activities, of course, and the main goals that we want to have. So most of these goals, they are also guided from the standardization requests. We needed, of course, to answer to the CRA requirement of Annex 1, Part 1 of the legislative text. Of course, we need to be aligned with the standardization request M606 that was introduced by Yanis before. And we are covering the line 214. This standard, why we need to create an horizontal PT2 catalog of security control, because one, we want to support product into the default category. 90% of the products in the market, they are from the default category. So this is the reason why. And most of these, and in CRA, you can have, you can do self-assessment and you can choose any standard, okay? And the importance to have a standard like PT2 is to have an agreed harmonizing standard that you can use as a reference for your activity. And you can have the same language then with eventual notified body, with market surveillance. And so this is the reason why it's also important to have the definition of our standard like PT2. And of course, our goal is to create a catalog of security control. So we can also add more control compared to the legislative text, because of course it's a catalog. You can pick and choose what you need based on your type of product, based on your risk. So this is the reason why we are not hardly bounded to the legislative text. We can add more. We can have the minimum of that security control, but we can add more. So for example, in 18,000, we will use as a baseline of our standard, the 18,031. In fact, you will see in the workshop that most of the security control that we selected are from 18,031. So the work that has been done for red will not be thrown away, and we are reusing and building up on that type of work. In fact, at the time, there was a lot of discussion, for example, if secure boot was supposed to be integrated or not. They decided to integrate in 18,031, but for CRA, with our PT2 standard, there will be no problem at all, because anyway, you need to select. If you need it, you can select. And so that is the reason why there will be no issue to, and less conversation if security control needs to be included or not. So we try to include as much as we can, and of course, most of the most useful control that we can have. Of course, we will create also a kind of mapping with 18,031 to make sure that the transition is smooth between RED and CRA. And then we need to include, as the standardization request is saying, the security problem definition, security objective, technical specification, and assessment methodology. All these are the minimum elements that we need to include within our standard. Okay. How we started to create our standard. So it was difficult to go to high-level essential requirement and to go directly to define the list of category control. So within a PT2, we started to create a technical report. Technical report is not a standard; it's something that is supporting the development of our security control. So we started from the essential requirement. We created a list of threats regarding to the essential requirement. Of course, these threats are high level. We are on horizontal standard. We cannot define specific threats. Maybe this will be possible in specific verticals, but this is the best that we could do at our level. Of course, when we define the security threat, the list of threats that we want to cover, we link with security objective, and then we link to, and then the security objective are the foundation for our list of control. In the slides that I created today for you, there is also this type of list of threats and mapping with security objective. And we did this also to be prepared and align with the standardization request and to make sure that our work is consistent. So there are a lot of standards that are available on the market, but mostly are related to the ISO 27001, that is an information security management system, and it covers more the organizational aspect. PT2 is more product related, so there is difference. There is difference in the nature of these two standards, because 27001 and 27002 are more organizational, and PT2 aims to be more product related. But the activities are all the same. So you are starting with the risk assessment, you are selecting applicable security requirement. The high-level security requirement are the essential requirement, going through security objective and then your specific requirement, and then you need to implement this requirement, monitor and document. This is all the life cycle. But like I said before, you need to list your risk, you need to treat your risk, and you need to sometimes to treat your risk, you need to select the right security control. This is the reason why you have the step selecting and implementing security control. And this is the touch that we have with the PT1, because PT1 is defining all this framework. And then we are the catalog of security control where you can pick and choose what you need. Okay, so in this slide, I just highlight what are the security concepts and what are the relationship. I like to use the Common Criteria 2022 definition, in which you have an owner, that the manufacturer, that is creating their product and imposing, of course, security control. You are imposing this security control taken from our catalog of security control for addressing or to reduce a risk. And here you can see also the parallel that I made with the CRA, and then I link the definition of the risk that is in Common Criteria with the definition of risk that is in CRA. So at least you can have a parallel, and you can also understand what is the basic model that we will be using. Of course, the risk is generated by a threat agent who is attacking you. And then, of course, the attacker is using a threat, a weaknesses on your product and when a weakness is exploited, this will become a risk with 100% impact on your product itself. And of course, you are targeting an asset. An asset is the private information, financial information, security asset, your configuration file, anything can be an asset. So, and when you are designing your system, you need to design based on the asset definition and to understand what you want to protect. And this is the way that you justify an application of a security control. This is just a collection of many security frameworks that are available. Like I said, some of these security control are used also in NIS2, and I think that you can spot also Cyber Fundamentals Essential that is based on 27001, and this is what is used from Belgium government or the for the implementation of the NIS2. Let's go with the essential requirement. I think that this slide is just summarizing what are the essential requirements and what are the main components. What we want, what CRA wants to aim, and so this is also the image that Philippe showed in the first slide. There was a cheese with a lot of holes, and then you have less holes in this cheese. So we cannot have really 100% security, it doesn't exist, but the aim of CRA is to try to reduce, to have fewer cybersecurity vulnerabilities within your product. And what does it mean in hardware and software? So it's not only on the hardware. And I think that a main difference between CRA and 18031 is that 18031 is focused on the product itself only. So it's product centered. So it's not taking in consideration, for example, associative services, remote data processing. And so this is the reason why with CRA, you are covering also the other element of the product itself. So mobile app, all the part of cloud that is related to your product, your part of code, and so on. You're starting from PT1, like I said, security by design and risk assessment. You justify with your risk assessment a set of security control. The basic security control that you need to have in your product is that when you are placing your product in the market should be with known vulnerabilities. Then with maybe assessment and so on, we will go security control by security control, and we will go into detail later. Here it just listed security by default configuration, security update. Of course, if you have a vulnerability in your product, you need to be able to remediate that vulnerability. You need to have authorized access to your product, authentication, access control, and so on. You need to protect the confidentiality and integrity of the information that are in your product. Data minimization, GDPR-related privacy information, and so on. You need to protect availability of your main functionality. So imagine that you have a heater system and the heater system is stopping to work while you have rigid winter, and this can be also not only a problem, but also can be risky also for the people, for all people that they are relying on your heating system. You need to minimize the negative impact. So you cannot have the same things that happen with the Mirai bootnet effect. So it means that your device should not create a damage to other devices that are in the network. So, and to avoid this, you need to implement some of the protection. You need to reduce your attack surface. You need to reduce the impact of an incident, log information and security, and you need to delete the information in a secure manner with mechanism like data zeroization and so on. And of course, when you design your product with this set of security control, you have the after you are placing on the market your product, you need to make sure that the vulnerability handling is managed through your life cycle. Okay, this is just it's not the scope of today, but I wanted also to give you a kind of overview of what are the main security requirements that are included in PT3. Why I wanted to refer, because there are requirements like known vulnerability that of course is linked to what we will do in PT3, that we will have the SBOM, that you are identifying vulnerabilities, you need to remediate vulnerabilities, you need to do regular tests, you need to inform user about vulnerability that happen, advisory, and so on. Coordinated vulnerability disclosure, intake of potential vulnerability, secure distribution of the update, and update available and related dissemination. So I will not touch it in detail this, because of course it's not of the scope of our work today, our workshop today, but at least you can have it in mind as other requirements that are important to have a secure product. We are starting here now with the main essence of today. And so we will go and we will list all the security control, and this will be part of your activity today. So we will have the first essential requirement that is about the vulnerability assessment, let's say, that you need to have a known vulnerability within your product. So to have that, we are starting with the definition of threats. And of course, we define a generic threats that is called non-vulnerable exploitation. We have, of course, a security objective, that vulnerability management process. Of course, to make sure that your product doesn't have vulnerability, you need to have a vulnerability management process in place. But like I said, PT2 is a product-related standard. So this is the reason why our difficulty was to isolate process from product-related activities, because sometimes they are borderline. We cannot really have a clear cut, and we need to understand how much we can bring on the product. And our strategy is to focus on product capability. What are the products? But here is purely a process requirement. It's not like software update that I can focus on the product capability. Here I need to rely on processes. So just to have a mapping with 18031, of course, one of the requirements that is that we can attach that is similar is JAC1, generic essential requirement that are in 18031, that is up-to-date software and hardware with no public known exploitable vulnerability. Like I said, the scope was limited. We cannot really inherit it as it is, this requirement. We need to expand because, of course, it covering associated services, it covers remote data processing, and we need to understand how we can contextualize. And this is also our job today, because this can be one of your consideration on the table while you are analyzing some risk, you are selecting security control, you are giving justification. You need to you need also to document what are the challenge that you found, what are the rationale, why you choose a security control instead to the other. What are the difficulty when you should implement that? Can be implemented on the mobile cloud part, that's the remote data processing and the product. So what is the difference? So I want to challenge you to think and to have this kind of mindset while you are going through this risk. Of course, the work that we did is not perfect. There are still gaps. And so we want also to let you think about what are the missing control that we should have, and we didn't think about it. For example, here, while we are defining this requirement, we didn't really consider supply chain vulnerabilities. And so we focus only on the non-vulnerability. We didn't have any focus on the supply chain vulnerability. And we need to understand also how we can merge and how we can link with PT1 and PT3 and with the test for non-vulnerability and regular tests. So I created these notes also for you to have a kind of reference where you can think and you can also improve. You can give us new ideas or things that we didn't think about. Yeah. After that you need to have a product with non-vulnerability. We have the secure configuration. So of course, with the secure configuration, you should not have the full password. You should not have, and you should have always a way to reset the product to the original state, and possibly without malware. I think that while I was testing some of the product in the past, I had a manufacturer that they had the reset functionality, but they forgot to delete some of the memory area, and then you were and you as an attacker, you could have hidden in that memory area a malware, and so even with the reset, the malware was there. So there are things that we are trying also to embed in our risk. There are risks that we are trying also to embed in our security control, and we want to help also manufacturer to think about this kind of risk or recurrent risk on the product. So we had, for example, we thought about having the unsecured default configuration exploitation as a threat. And then we have the missing reset functionality for the configuration. We have the malware exploitation, and then the data extraction. So of course, we want also to make sure that you are not able to extract sensitive data from your device. Imagine with the private key that you have there, or any seed that you could use to have your chain of attack. So in this note, I just included you some of the reference. So there is, of course, secure by default. You have also the OWASP top 10 proactive control. I found it a nice resource. There are a lot of best practices, and it's worth also to have a look and to see how the industry, and then of course a standard de facto like OWASP are doing this. And so we are also looking at what are the best practices. And of course, you need to make sure that you are deactivating security protocols, no default password, least privilege, and automatic updates. I'm not listing all the security control here because you have also other essential requirements that are a little bit overlapping. And so this is also our next challenge. So how we can isolate category security control, or how we need to label security control that are part of the, for example, secure configuration, but also part of minimize attack surface, because sometimes you cannot really have a clear cut between them. Here for secure configuration, there is no mapping with 18031. So you have no default password, so that you have, but like I told you before, I included that in other categories. And we decided to create other security control that are new, that are not part of 18031. And we created, for example, the security default configuration, security startup configuration, and factory reset. Also, factory reset was not in part of the 18031 and is a more than needed functionality that needs to be included. So we have security updates. You need to, of course, when you have the product, you cannot create a product that is secure on the market 100%. When you are placing the product, maybe the day after there is a new vulnerability that is discovered, and so what do you do? So you need to have a security update. You need to find a way to push some security update and to solve your vulnerability that you have on your product. Of course, there are also other characteristics that are asked for the essential requirement that are not captured 100% by other standards like 33645 or 18031. And then we have the opt-out mechanism that you need to have. You need to have a notification of available updates to user. All these characteristics are also difficult to implement because maybe you don't have a screen on your device, how you notify. So there are some of the things that are not possible. Maybe you can have a sound, or maybe you can have, we need to be also creative when we are creating security control, but we need also to draw the line where we can go into the specification. Some of the detailed characteristic of a security control, we are leaving also to vertical to specify further, because of course some of these characterization are difficult to be captured and englobated in a horizontal standard. But here we have three different threats that we are including: unpatchable vulnerability exploitation, because of course you need to define not all the product you can update. For example, you have in your ROM, ROM, you can have some of the software that is running there that you cannot really update with the software, so because it's not in a programmable memory. And you need to consider what is the risk if a vulnerability is there. Because of course in the NLF you have as an ultimate or market surveillance may ask you to recall a product if there is really a huge risk for the end user. If you are not able to update. So this is the reason why it's essential to have this characteristic. We have, of course, a risk that you didn't patch your product. So we need also to consider that type of risk. Or what is the risk of a missing update notification? So maybe the user doesn't know that there is an update. And so the user is unaware. And so that is a risk that we considered in our threat model. There may be additional one. Maybe in your consideration, you say, you didn't consider this risk. Please add this risk to your consideration. We can improve our technical report. And of course, we can also improve then the definition of our standard if we miss something that is very critical. Security updates is a little bit challenging because, of course, what about remote data processing? Most of the manufacturers, they do silent patching most of the time, even on the product, but it's challenging on the remote part, on the cloud part, because most of the time it's something that is not visible to the end user. So you just fix and you don't say that you had a vulnerability. So I had many products that I tested, so that there were a problem on the cloud part of the IoT devices, and I know that there was no security advisory, but was silently patched. And we need to understand if it's reasonable to include also the security advisory of the remote data processing in our standard or not. This is the reason why in the working group 9 and PT2, we have interaction with manufacturer that will contribute. And so this is the reason why another component, key component that Yanis said is that we are trying to create standard with most possible consensus, because in that way we can create something reasonable for the market. We don't want to overcomplicate things. And so this is the reason why it's important also this day, and it's important your active participation to detect some of the issues that we were not able maybe to integrate so far, and we really rely on you to support and provide input. And then, of course, we need also to define how to deal with appropriate timeline and timely updates. What does it mean, timely updates? 2 days, 3 days, 1 month, 1 year. In horizontal standard, we really cannot define this timeline, and we need to understand what is the right balance that we can specify what does it mean timely. And so this is also another challenge that we have. And this generated also a lot of discussion. Of course, for mapping with 18001 or security control that you will have available during the workshop, here you have mapping with 18001. You have the applicability of security update. You have secure updates and automatic updates that they are coming from 18031. So they're already defined there. We just need to contextualize better for the CRA, but we will use that. In addition to our standard, we added the security control that you have there. Availability of updates, update mechanism, timely updates, again, so how to define timely updates as a requirement, and how we can characterize that. Maybe that is also a challenge. User update notification and postpone updates. So this is something that it was not in 18031, how to postpone the updates. So I think that this is the one that we added. So I think that just to have a timing information. So what's the time now? Because I don't have a 5:50. Okay, so perfect. I will try also to cover this, and I will take a little bit of your time, and then we can, at least we are prepared for the next session. So we have access control. Of course, you need to make sure that you have your product that implement, protect your asset that you are managing, and you need to have access management system and authentication system for your product, and then you need to implement this in a rational way. And we have 2 simple threads here. That is unauthorized access, and then we have also another requirement that was not in 18031, that is report on possible unauthorized access. Why you have that requirement? Because of course, it's not enough that you have your security control. You need to have also a mechanism to a log to understand what is the failed authentication attempt or the failed access control attempt. And then you need to be able to send this to a CM maybe, or to an alert system to analyze and to see and to correlate this event with some attack that is on progress. And so this functionality is also important for that. Not all the product, they need this security control, but we need to list it like you said before. While we created the standard, we missed, of course, we didn't include access control reporting. So this is something that is missing in the list of control that you have, but I want to tell you that we are intending to include, and you can also highlight some others if you think that we missed some other security control. Here you have also the mapping with 18031, applicability of security control and appropriate access control mechanism. This is directly inherited from 18031. We don't need to add so much there. And then you have all the authentication mechanisms, and we just inherited these two as it is, and we didn't add any other security control. Our idea is to, apart from adding this missing security control that I highlighted, we will rework most of these requirements from 18,031. And of course, we need to contextualize with associated services, with remote data processing, and we need to understand how we can contextualize it. We have protection of confidentiality. Encryption is not the only mechanism that you can use. There is also different mechanisms. What you need to use here is you need to protect the data that are at rest, in transit, and in elaboration. So this is the three keywords that you need to use. And then this is the reason why we have a simple mapping with this threat that is focusing on protecting the data on the device or on the remote data processing or on the mobile application, that the data that are processed and data that are transiting between two devices or between mobile application and device itself and so on. You can think any relation. Here, of course, we had also missing security control when we did the analysis. So we missed the data in transit and processed. So our challenge is also to understand how we can create a security control for data in elaboration. We are still thinking about how to define it. Some of that looks simple, but while we are working on the specific security requirement, you need to also to understand how we are trying not to overshoot too high, but also to have a minimum baseline. And so that is really the challenge, and to understand how we can define that line. Here you have the list of control that we inherited by the 18,031. You have the security storage mechanism, security communication mechanism, confidential cryptographic key and cryptography. These are all inherited by 18,031, and we are just adapting that security control for our work. The same for integrity. So because sometimes you don't need to protect integrity and confidentiality, sometimes you need to protect only integrity. So while we were creating the requirements, we were we were also trying to combine, but we realized that it's better to keep it separate, because sometimes you need only to protect integrity, you don't need confidentiality and to overcomplicate your design. And so this is the reason why we also keep how to say, we keep it separate. Here you have also, again, the threat like protecting data at rest, in transit, and processed, and then how you can detect tampering of your data. So this is an additional requirement that we derive from the essential requirement. So in fact, you have the report on corruptions. There are some mechanisms like CRC or other mechanisms like that you can identify if there is a missing bit and so on. Huh? Yeah. Thank you. And of course, also here we have the same problem of the other security control. Where is it? Wait, I went too fast. Yeah, and here we have also a problem with, we missed the security control of protecting data processed. And so just because we have the challenge how to do it. We have the security control, security storage mechanism, and security communication, and we need just to integrate the other controls that I say with the data processing that is not there. Let's go to data minimization. This is more related to minimize the data. Maybe you need to, when you are designing your product, you need to make sure that you have the minimum data that are supporting a functionality, and this is directly connected with the GDPR. And this requirement we still need to define. We were starting to think and to define and to think about how we can define it, technical security requirement on data minimization. Some of the tentative is in the EN 3003645. There is a section on data protection, and we need to understand how we can reuse that part. Here, we are, of course, when you are defining data minimization, is based on some process, like I said before. You cannot minimize your data if you don't know your data, and you need to have a strong data classification system. So to understand what you need or you don't need, you need to label your data. When you label, so this is a process part, you can then you can demonstrate that you are using only the minimum data that you have there. And so this is the reason why it's a challenge between a product requirement process and how to merge both. Here, we inherited from 18,031, only the user notification mechanism, but there was nothing related really to data minimization, and we need to create a new requirement that is totally new, that is called data minimization, that we are still in the definition phase. We have availability protection. You need to make sure that critical functionality of your device is still running. Like you said before, you have an heating system. You need to make sure that nobody can damage the functionality of heating your house when there is a winter outside. So, and at least the basic functionality, they need to be there even after a cybersecurity attack, after a denial of service attack. And of course, we are thinking about how to manage this. We are managing through asking to manufacturer to have documenting of what are the essential functions, to document how they are protecting this function, and to define the fault tolerant mechanism for their product. We have all the requiring control, security control from 18,031. We have applicability and appropriateness of resiliency mechanism. And the requirement that we added is the recovery from incident. And this is another requirement that we are still thinking about how to define. So all ideas that you may have during the workshop on this are very welcome. So, because here we need input on the added security control. You need also to minimize the impact from external, the negative impact from other devices. So your device should not damage or interfere with other devices within the network. And here we have, again, this is still in the definition. We need your input if you have some input on these requirements. So this is the reason why. And what we want to focus is on the product capability perspective, but we still need to think how we can define this requirement itself. We have, I have a lot of comments that say that maybe it's not, we cannot really map with equipment integrity. Equipment integrity is secure boot, okay? It's also here borderline, but of course, if you have a security boot, you have less chance that your product can be manipulated, and you have integrity protection, and less chance that can impact on the security of other device. It's also harder to identify what is the right categorization, and there is a lot of conversation that are happening here. So I understand if somebody say, maybe I will put this requirement somewhere else. It's here. You can also make some comments or provide suggestions during the workshop here. We need to add also security control for external impact limitation and prevent the attack propagation. Attack surface reduction. Here it is, you have all the hardening mechanism, all the documentation that you need to have in place, input validation. And so this is what we try to do. We inherited also all these requirements in the general equipment capabilities from 18,031. And so you have a huge baseline that you can use for addressing this requirement. And we added a new requirement reduction attack surface that we need to understand what we need to add to cover the essential requirement, in addition to the requirement that we inherited from 18,031. Impact of an incident, this is also in definition phase. How you can, like I said, also this requirement has a lot of overlap with also PT1, because of course you you can have different layered security levels. So you can have also hardening that we saw before. We can also have hardening techniques here. When you compile your code, you have some security control that you can add on in the combination compilation level, some security control that you can add on OS level, some security control on application layer. And so here we need to understand how we can integrate the layered security control and what we can, how we can characterize this security control. And here we are trying to define the security called reduction of impact of an incident, but we still need to think about what is it? What is the real beast here? We have monitoring and logging, another functionality that is important. So you need to understand if there is some attack in progression for you into your device. You need to store security relevant information, and this is also important. And we inherited all this requirement. The logging mechanism is inherited from 18031. We can take it as it is. Then we have network monitoring and traffic control mechanism. Here you have also some of you that may say, maybe traffic control mechanism that is more related to gateway is not relevant for your IT. Yeah, maybe can be a good consideration. But like I said, if you don't need that control, you can just, if your device is not an internet gateway that is handling traffic control, you can also exclude this because it's not part of the capability that you're supporting. And of course, along with this requirement, we added additional security control that are in the list. We are the last one, so we can then introduce the other part, security deletion. Of course, you don't want that in the decommissioning phase, your device, your consumer, your end user wants to dismiss their device, and then there is a Wi-Fi password on the device when they are trying to resell it, give it to another. So you need to make sure that your reset functionality is working as appropriate, and then you are able to delete on permanent basis all the settings of the device and all the data, privacy data of the user itself. Here we just have applicability of deletion mechanism on 18001, but 18001 is not covering the secure deletion of all the data. And so this is the reason why we are added on this set of security control that we are defining within PT2. We are here now. There are a lot of references that you can check with other standards that are we are referencing to. I will just go fast. So these are the next step for PT2. So we are already gave you all the basis so that we are starting with the TR, technical report. We are checking the threat model, and we are consistently define then the PT2 standard. And we are at the workshop. So what you need to do today. So it means that we are starting with the scenario one. We had two scenarios, but then we thought that it's better to keep one scenario because we had scenario from office use and industrial use, but at the end we cut and then we keep only the scenario of actual use. You can see the devices that are from Dinui. So they were very kind because we could have done our workshop with an invented use case like the case in Denmark, but we were very lucky that UNE work and find also the availability of Dinui to provide their support in providing us a real product where we can have a real challenge that they are facing with not a definitive risk assessment, but of course a good risk assessment to have some reasoning. So that is also really, really appreciated. So I want to say a big thank you to Dinui for this. So here you have a time switch. Is a device that you put in your power socket and is helping for your power consumption in office. So you can have a mobile application where you set a timer and you can say, okay, you need to have electricity in this socket only from 8 to 6. office hour. So you are making sure that all the devices are turned off in the night, for example, and you can have, this is one of example of use that you can have there. So what is the objective? So we will start with a real product, and Dinui prepare for us a risk assessment, all the essential cybersecurity requirements that they implement inside the product itself. We will have all the communication with the relevant stakeholder. You can see also part that are subcontracted, part that they are not in their own control. And these are part of the challenge that we need to see, because the use case of Dinui is a use case of a SME, small, medium enterprise. And so all the challenge that they have is just challenge that other small, medium manufacturer that will have in the market itself. Of course, there is all the life cycle that we have in place, and then of course all the documentation that you are available in the next slide. So you can see this is an image of a real device that is there. You can then have a look during the break. And like I said, this is a product that is falling into the default category. You have the device, the time switch. You have 3 types of time switch that you can use. The mobile app that is controlling the time switch with Bluetooth. And then you have all the backend part that is the cloud server. And here the challenge is that not all these 3 parts are in total control of Dinui. And so this is also something that we are trying to gather from you, how we can overcome this challenge, what are the lessons learned during the application of security control. We will have also the presentation now in a bit. I don't steal so much time over because I took all the times. I presented to you all the security control now. By now, we will have the presentation from Eva. I will support her also during the presentation now. And what will happen, so is that we have 10 tables here and 10 tables, virtual tables remotely. We will have 10 people for each table. As you can see, each table has a table coordinator, and every one of the tables, so you have a pre-assigned risk that are isolated from, they are categorized in a risk category, and then the risk category has specific risk. And we will ask from you to fill it out, or for the table coordinator to fill it out for by risk. Each single risk, you have a risk category and then single risk. We need to fill out the security control that are linked to specific risk. And then we need to understand how would you define that technical control. What are the gaps that you identify? What are the issues? What are the challenge? What is the lesson learned during the discussion that you had for each table, physically and virtually? And then at the end, after the break, we will summarize this point and we will have a panel discussion. We will go around with Eva table by table, understanding what are the main points of discussion, and then we will highlight some of the points. And I will call 3 table coordinators to define what did they learn during the table discussion. This is the table that has been pre-assigned, so you can have risk category and specific risk description. And these are all the table with the table coordinators. And I think that by now you already know which table you're assigned with your specific risk. And I think that we can go now with the specific presentation from Eva. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at this CRA workshop. Okay, I will present a real case, a real product to be analyzed according to CRA. I will analyze it, and I will analyze how impacts, how it's, which is the impact in a company like Dinui the application of CRA according to the product development process, including third-party elements in the product, and the information and support that must be given to the provider to configure the product and to make it secure. Okay. So this is the outline for today. I will explain a little bit what a time switch is. Angelo has explained it already a little bit, and I will explain which is the intended environment. We will understand a little bit the product configuration process. We will just look a little bit the architectural diagram of each part, the time switch, the mobile application, and the cloud. We will analyze the management when we include third-party elements. We have done some risk assessment, and we have to include this risk assessment in the product development process in the companies. So I will explain that part also. We have 3 risk assessment analyses, one for each part, time switch, mobile app, and cloud part. And we will analyze a little bit all of them. I have another part to introduce which information and instructions have to provide to the user. And I have highlighted some conclusions from the perspective of a little company like Dinui, how CRA impacts in the manufacturer from manufacturer's perspective. Okay, let me begin a little bit introducing Dinui. Dinui was founded in 1947. It's a family business company, and it has its own R&D team. And we are 50 employees. We design light regulator, constant light control system, motion detectors, and so on. We are introducing now building automation devices based on KNX, standard, and DALI. And we develop smart devices to offer maximum energy efficiency in building automation systems. Our objective and motivation to participate in this workshop is to analyze how CRA will affect our products in the future. Okay, and about myself, I'm a telecommunication engineer with 25 years of experience in research and development. I have been working in different companies, and I've worked developing products, both parts hardware and software products. And currently, I'm part of the R&D team at Dinui. Okay, this slide is to explain a little bit what a time switch is and the intended environment, because all the risk assessment is based on the intended environment and context that the product, where the product is going to be used. So a time switch is a device that it's a simple device. It only switches a relay, and when that relay switches, you can turn on or off a light. So it switches according to a schedule, and we can use the time switch in all type of venues and facilities, both outdoor and indoor, where comfort and energy saving are required through automatic time-based activation. Time switches are programmable weekly, annual, or astronomical with astronomical repetition. So here in the table you have some use cases and examples. How in the second column you have how this time switch is used, and in the third column you have the analysis of what happens if a relay does not switch in case, for example, with a cyber attack scenario. So I will mention some examples. We could have we could use it in sport field lighting, swimming pools, greenhouses and farms, for school sirens, for example, for shop window lighting, climate control in offices, outdoor lighting, ornamental lighting, and any time-based operation. Okay, so I think you have these slides printed, so I will go a little bit fast. Okay, this is a slide to explain a little bit which is the configuration process, and to explain how we put the 3 elements in the context. Okay. So we have the element that Dinui designs and manufactures, that it's the time switch itself. We have 3 types of time switches in 3 different formats. And we have a third-party configuration application. So the time switches are communicated via Bluetooth with the DNUI application, and the application we can configure the schedule for the time switch with the application. We can also switch on and off the relay. So the first time you install the application, the user must register an email, and this data is transmitted to a cloud server. So an email is registers, and the user must acknowledge that email to be sure that the email address is correct and is real. So once this email address is verified, users have the permissions to use the application. And after that, we can scan the available devices. We can see a list in the mobile application. We select the device that we want to configure. And the application reads if there is any pin configured in the time switch. If a pin is configured, the user can't be able to access to the time schedule configuration. Okay, this is a security control we have included in the time switch. And if it hasn't any pin configured, you can access the time switch directly. And after that, you can configure any schedule, and you can change the pin also. Okay, this is the time switch architectural diagram. We have a hardware part where the main part or the more critical part would be the microprocessor. It's an embedded system. We have there the flash included and all the Bluetooth hardware and software also, all this stack. We have some in this flash, in this microprocessor, we have some security elements that we can use. And in the software part, we have the hardware abstraction layer. We have the drivers that the microprocessor manufacturers provide us. So we have the BLE stack and drivers to communicate with the hardware part, and the FreeRTOS driver. And above all, we have the time switch application process that is programmed in DNUI. Okay, this is the mobile application diagram. This is a third-party element for DNUI. We have subcontracted this part. And here you have the representation with boxes of the main parts of the backend of this configuration. We have a central element, which is called a business logic, which it manages device management, scheduling, user validation, and state control, so on. And it connects to external services like update services, data layer, user interface, and the communication with the middleware that will be the BLE connectivity or REST API communication with the cloud server. Okay, and finally, we have to take into account the cloud server part. It's a subcontracted part also for DNUI, of course. It's a third-party element for us. And what it does is to receive the message, the form that users have filled in with the application, and the name and the email, it's read and it's analyzed in this cloud server, so that then the user have the permissions in the application to use it. We have asked our provider or cloud provider to give us some security features that the cloud have to take it into account in our risk assessment analysis. So we have intrusion prevention systems, intrusion detection system, firewalls, whitelist, blacklist, web attack blocking systems, and so on. Okay, in this slide, I'm trying to analyze the subcontracting elements and what the company has to do with the components sourced from third parties. And if a component are subcontracted to a third party as manufacturer, you have the final responsibility of the components that are accompanying your product. So we must ensure that the components of our supply chain incorporated into our designs are compliant with this CRA. This itself, it's a real challenge for a company, because we do not control all the elements when we subcontract a third party element. So as I have mentioned, we have some of the elements, some of the third-party elements that we have are mobile application, services in the cloud server, and within the software component associated with the microprocessor, we have, for example, FreeRTOS and the BLE stack. We could have, if we deep inside the design, we could have more. Okay. And the procedures that manufacturers have to have, it's definition of software bill of materials, manufacturer's name, and component version. Monitor the component in the SBOM, that the components in SBOM don't contain known vulnerabilities. Ensure security updates throughout the product's life cycle for these third-party elements, and verify that third-party software and hardware complies with the necessary security measures. Okay, this slide wants to represent a little bit how we must introduce the risk assessment analysis in the product development process, because this risk assessment is going to be the base to make decisions in which hardware and software resources and in which security components we will include in our design. So this is a little bit simplified, but we can see that we have the first stage where we define the requirements for the product. So we have to do the first risk assessment, a draft of the risk assessment in this stage, so that we have to take into account which security controls and which resources, with hardware and software resources, we have to include in the first prototype that we are going to design in the next stage. So in the first prototype, we already include the cybersecurity features. After this, we have the last prototype where we validate the full functionality of the prototype. And here we must validate the functionality, electrical security test, validate cybersecurity features needed, and generate product internal documentation, where we must include cybersecurity risk assessment. And we have to generate also user manuals, datasheets, and installation schemes, like we do actually, but we have to include the elements associated to security. Then we have the industrial area and the first serialization process. And finally, we have to analyze, once the product is in market, we have to maintain the risk assessment table, and we have to make a periodic review of this risk assessment during its life cycle. Okay, in this slide, I have a little bit defined which are the risk assessment elements. I have used this risk assessment matrix, but we could use another one, another more complex one, but we have used this simple one in this case. So I will define the both elements that are the probability. Probability measures the likelihood or chance that a specific risk event will occur. And the impact measures the severity of the consequences or effects in the risk event will occur. So as you see, these two values are the base of the risk assessment, and the value of these elements depends on the context of use of the product. So it's very important to associate all of these parts. Okay, you will find 3 tables like this one. Okay, I will introduce each column. You have them printed in your tables in detail, and I haven't done time to explain all of this risk, but I will explain a little bit the tables. Okay, so in the first column you have the identification of the risk. When the risk is associated to time switch, you have put a T near the R. We have identified some assets to be protected in the next column. I have defined these ones, but we could define another ones, or it could be more ones, but we will decide to put them here for this workshop. In the next column, we have the threats associated to it, that assets, the vulnerability, and the analysis of impact, probability, and risk level associated with the risk matrix that I explained before. I have included the mitigation measures included in the next column. I have included some comments on how we have made decisions. And in the last column, you have as the essential requirements that are included in the Annex 1, Part 1 of CRA. I have associated these essential requirements to each risk. They can be okay or not, or you can consider that you could add another one, and we are open to this analysis. Okay, so we have included, to explain a little bit the assets, we have included the schedule function itself, and the threats would be the man-in-the-middle communication interception. We have another asset, it's the on-off control itself. So we have to protect that control for unauthorized access. The basic mitigation measure that we have in this time suite, it's a ping control code. So we have to protect this ping configuration code from force attack. So we have included that if user have more than 6 attempts, the application logs out. Then if you are logged out, you have to use the master ping code to unlock the system. So, okay, so this master ping code is not static. So we have, it changes every day, and the user must call the factory to change, to know this master pin and recover its system. The time switch about the next risk. The time switch now is not firmware updatable, but I have included this risk here to analyze what would you do if it was applicable. Okay, because maybe it's a feature that we have to include in the time switch, and it's that element that could include malicious firmware, and it's I consider that it's a very critical process to the firmware update. The next risk is for the Bluetooth element. It periodically sends some identifiers at Bluetooth network identifiers. So it would be a risk if we emit them periodically. In the next line, we have the pairing data. We have to securely store this pairing data. And the last risk is the configuration application itself, because it's the tool to configure the time switch. So we have to protect the access to that configuration application. Okay, this is another view of the same thing. In this slide, I wanted to analyze, in the first column, you have the essential requirement itself, and I wanted to comment which elements are associated with each requirement. Okay. And in the last column, we have the measures that we have not implemented at this stage according to the level of risk, but could be considered for future implementation if needed. So it may be helpful for you when you analyze its risk in the workshop, in the tables. You can read it, and it can help you to analyze something more. Okay. Sorry, this is the table for the mobile application. This table, it has been more difficult for me to create this table because I can control more what the time switch, how it works, but the mobile application is a third-party element for us. So we have to ask our provider about the risk and the mitigation measures that we have included there. So here we have to analyze mobile application code itself, the Bluetooth communication channel, as I explained in the time switch, the user data that is handled by the application. Here it includes the schedule itself, the time switch schedule, but also the data that is exchanged with the cloud. We have to protect the cloud server access and the API endpoints. We have to protect also the authentication credentials that we have to connect with the cloud. For the application, we do have a firmware update possibility, so we have to take into account the risks that we have when updating the firmware of the application itself. And we have two more risks for analysis that are related with logging and monitoring of the traffic. to avoid the lack of detection of some traffic would be a problem. Okay, and the last one is related to the data management. This is a similar table to the time switch one, but for the mobile application. Okay, and this slide represents a little bit when we have done the analysis, the risk assessment analysis for the cloud server. We ask our cloud provider about the implemented security measures. So in the slides you have, this is very technical, they are very technical concepts, but we covered all of these security measures, these ones. And with these security concepts, I have grouped them depending on the security concepts. And these concepts in the right are included in the columns of the risk assessment. So if you need to know all the technical names, what they are, you can read in this slide. Oh, sorry. This is the cloud server risk assessment element. What I've done here is to identify some assets to protect regarding the cloud server, its threats, and I have associated the mitigation measures that the provider have given us and related which the assets to protect and the threats. Okay, and in the right we have the association also with the essential requirements of CRA. When you are analyzing these tables later, I will be with Angelo, and you can ask me whatever you need to know. Okay. Okay, this slide it represents the information and instructions that must be provided to the users according to CRA. We have to give manufacturer identification in the product and contact details. So we provide it in datasheet and user manuals and website. We have to give a contact for reporting vulnerabilities and coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy. We include this contact in our technical support section in the website now, but we have the coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy pending. The product has to have a unique identification. So we have in the products a laser marking where we write the product reference, product order, date, hardware and software versions, etc. We have to indicate in the user manual the intended purpose of the product, the security environment where it's going to be used, this essential functionality and information about the security properties of the product. We have to indicate also non-foreseeable circumstance which may lead to significant cybersecurity risks. We have to inform user about that in the user manual. We need to have an Europe Declaration of Conformity internet address. We have it in the website. We need to have technical security support type and support period for vulnerabilities and updates. We have to document which relevant information has been taken into account to determine a support period. Okay, we have to indicate or explain in the datasheet and user manual which measures during initial commissioning and lifetime to ensure to configure the product and to make it secure. And optionally, you can indicate where the access software bill of materials is available. In our case, we have not that information available. Okay, this slide represents a little bit of conclusion and highlights from the manufacturer point of view. So every decision regarding which security measures to implement in the product is based on the risk assessment carried out by the manufacturer, identifying the assets to be protected, threats and vulnerabilities, while taking into account the context in which the product will be used. So vulnerability is not always equal to risk. A balance must be struck between the implementation of security measures to ensure the product is sufficiently secure in its intended context, and the development efforts, as well as the hardware and software resources allocated to it, because it represents cost to the product. The risk assessment must be taken into account throughout the entire product development process, its manufacturing, and during the entire product's life cycle. It's a living product, and manufacturers must monitor the product once it's placed on the market. If components are subcontracted to a third party, as manufacturer, you have the final responsibility of the components that are accompanying your product. A manufacturer must notify any actively exploited vulnerability and ensure that vulnerabilities can be addressed through security updates. Manufacturers shall determine the support period and document relevant information that was taken into account to determine the support period pursuant to Article 13.8. Technical documentation must contain necessary information and specifications of the vulnerability handling process, including the software bill of materials, the coordinated vulnerability disclosure policy, evidence of the provision of a contact address for the reporting of the vulnerabilities, and a description of the technical solutions chosen for the security distribution of updates. Product placed on the market before the application of the CRA are not subject to regulation, except for the reporting obligations and actively exploitable vulnerabilities. In case of a substantial modification after placing the product on the market, the modified product is considered a new product under CRA and must comply with the requirements. And the last point is that if you place the same product but another batch, the future individual products should comply with CRA as per date of application. So CRA applied to each individual product that with digital elements when placed on the market, irrespective of whether the product with digital element is manufactured as an individual unit or in series. Okay, I will ask any questions you have during the workshop. This is the workshop scenario that we will analyze later that Angelo have already presented. Okay, so we are going to imagine that we have our time switches in an office, and we can control, or the workers in the office can control the heating or air conditioning of system of the time switches. Okay, and here in the table you have some cases that you can play a little bit with the time switches. This is the QR where you can download the new application. You can access the information of the MAC of the device just to identify the element. And you can play a little bit if you want to see the real product, just for creativity. Okay. Okay, and I think that that's all for my part. Okay. I think that we have lunchtime now. So see you later, and any question you have, I'm available to answer any of the risk assessment questions. Okay.
We will just collect the feedback of 3 tables. We selected the tables of Miguel, Jesus, and then we have the third one that is from table 10, Carlos. So we will just understand what are the highlights of these 3 tables. And then if there is time, we will just collect if there is other feedback that we need to collect from other tables. We can start with Miguel. Miguel, please. So if you can highlight some of the key points that you notice of your table and what is the major learning.
Thank you. So table 1, the first one. We had to deal with communication interception, credential theft, and misuse. We had a lot of communication during the table. Luckily, we had no credential thefts of misuse because this is a trusted table. Okay. The atmosphere, as you can see, of the discussion was quite high and productive. Now, coming down to the analysis, we chose a number of essential requirements that apply to the use case. We had lots of discussion on the security controls to choose, depending on the point of view of each of us, because the intended use could be different, and so were the perceptions there. We also had lots of discussion on the technical requirements, how to define that, and we had discussions on the level of detail and how to balance that. About the evaluation methodology, we kind of be biased through the CC, which was mentioned many times during the discussion as a particular framework. And then we were unable to complete the full form because we were not able to develop and agree on the table. So probably we'll have to meet several times more to finish to finish this. So all in all, very proactive, especially the interchange of information and ideas here. So very positive meeting. And I will not be able to submit this online because we haven't finished that, maybe after our first further meetings, okay? So that was all for table one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, there is a lot of information and a good case study to process, a lot of security controls. And of course, after the event, there will be also, UNE will send it out a form to add other feedback. And so this is also another important. So you are able also to submit feedback after the event. I don't know, I think that will be open for 1 week more, an additional 1 week. And so everybody, if you have something to add, you can add. So we will go to the next table. We will see if there are some lesson learned or highlights that we can check, we can share with everybody else. Yes, please.
Okay. We are table 2. We were dealing with unauthorized access and lack of incident detection. We also not have been able to finish the entire form because it's quite large. And we focus on the main idea that, or the main problems that we found. It's we found the risk assessment somehow incomplete because it don't include the intended use. It don't identify what are the critical assets in the device and what are the specific security objectives, what is the expected security behavior of the device, how it's supposed, what are the security functionality that is supposed to have. So this is one of the most relevant information that it should, we think it should be included in the risk assessment. The risk assessment of the manufacturer. So in a second stage, you can select the controls according to the expected security behavior of the device, expected according to the intended use of the device. It is not the same if the device is built for the intended use of ensure privacy of the consumer users or with intended use of ensure availability in a war zone or whatever. These are free choice of the manufacturers, but we expect to have this information in order to be able to select appropriately the controls to meet those security objectives. In the other message that we were in the table was that the categorization of the security control we found difficult to follow because doesn't have a easy structure to follow. We found controls that apply to functional statement of the device, the functionality of the device. We found controls that apply for the organization of the product developer. So applies to two different things, and it's difficult to follow. So as a recommendation, we recommend to have some kind of categorization of the security controls. First, in terms of what is the entity that apply, if it's applied to the product or the product manufacturer or the service operator, the people that is using the device in certain areas. And when we focus on the type of security controls specifically in the device, which we understand it's the main course here, there are many different types of security controls. And as we are dealing with essential security requirements that are quite basic in cybersecurity, most of the controls, only the functional security can be verified objectively. So the rest of the control, when control includes some objectivity, some judgment, measuring things, measuring the resistance, the testing methods, it will be very, very open. So we found difficulties because of that. And we strongly recommend to categorize the controls, identifying what are those controls that are objectively verifiable, the functional security, and to have testing methods, well-defined testing methods, and the controls defined with the enough level of precision to ensure that two different people achieve the same conclusion when assess their compliance. In particular, if we are thinking in products in the default category with the self-assessment, we should be sure that two different people always achieve the same result when assessing this. And these are main
Main a lot. So thank you so much. So, and you capture and you touch on a lot of problems on how we develop standard, how we reach consensus. And when you put together manufacturing in a room, you have diverse set of expectation. One is to detail, one is to highlight. We need to find always a right balance. That is the key. So we have the last table. So just to Carlos. And then what I want to do is to go through the form and then to highlight some of the outcome from the form itself. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you, Angelo. The table 10 is about the malicious firmware installation, analyze the risk G5, and analyze concrete for the time switch device. The analyze is concrete only for the device. In the analysis of the risk, the first question I think it's important. This kind of the device is not connected direct to the internet. Is not a product covered to the read DA. This is important because some question in the standard, in the 18031, is questions about the connection, the networks, and the network's stability. And in this case, only as the connection is temporal and the connection is Bluetooth in local and person. I think some requirements, I need different things to the requirements actual of the standard. This is the first question important. The other question important is about the default configuration. In case of the attack, this kind of the product is more difficult to do something wrong because the product is not connected to the network, but it's possible the product is blocked or the product down. In this case, it's important to guarantee the essential function of the product. Not is important the function of the network, but it's important the essential function of the product. It's possible software protection, but it's possible a hardware protection. For example, the contact of the equipment is standardized contact is open the contact, or the other protection about the hardware of the equipment, not only software. In this case, I think it's important.
Thank you so much. And then I think we noticed already three different perspectives. We are speaking about the same things, about the same product, and three different categories of risk. But here we focus more on the risk assessment, on hardware security control and characterization of the security control, and we need to define what is the right level of assurance that we need to provide, because as Jesus said, we need to provide a mechanism that is repeatable. And when you are creating an horizontal standard, it's very, very challenging to have a repeatable process. And so even in that aspect, we need to find the right balance. Now, I want to spend the last 10 minutes to go and to scroll a little bit from the result that we had. The idea is to we will touch one by one, so we start from the beginning. But the idea is that this form will be open for 1 week. You will have time to fill out and to add information. After this week, the idea is that we will extract this information and we will load all the data in a presentation that we will share as a material. So everybody of you will have access to the raw material and to a kind of summary of what are the outcome of today. I think that it's difficult to do this in real time. And so we need time to process, time to aggregate, and time to publish then on the website all this data. So it will be a lesson learned from everybody. And this is the main outcome and the main goal that we want to reach. This is the reason why we are giving 1 week to collect all their data and to have the final presentation. So as we can see, we have 74 risks that we analyze, or category of risk, with a time of 89 minutes. We will not, this is just an overview, but I don't think that we have time to go to overview. So as you can see, the first question, what are the applicable essential requirements? Even from this graph, you can see that the level of the number of times that were chosen, for example, confidentiality and integrity. So this, you can see a little bit what will be the relevance or prioritization that we need, and the attention that we need to put on this security control. And this gives this kind of indication. And I see that there are also 6 that they added other security control. Maybe can we check these other 6 if there is something interesting? Then we have people that they select other security control, and then I hear security by default, misuse of credential. I think that here they went a little bit more specific, because maybe we can see the details. So we will need to analyze later, because this is what is interesting also to understand why you think that you need to add new essential requirements. So because who filled this form, it means that for them, there is something not covered. And so this is what we will learn through these questions. What security control should be applied? So also here, you can see what is the number of time that a security control was selected. And even in this case, we can also a little bit prioritize. And as I see, all the security control have been touched. And again, I see also integrity protection and confidentiality protection are the ones that have more selection. So I think that they are the one. So, and it's interesting also to see why other were not selected, were not covered. And so this, we can learn also something from this graph. There were also here other 7. So I'm interested to see also the other 7. So we will go then in details, because if you select others, it means that the catalog that I provided to you was not enough. And that is where we learn if we need to add the new security control to our standard, okay? Here there is others. So I see that there is generic security control. I think that this is the extraction from the key. I see here pin length. Maybe this more specific, likelihood of attack. So now we need to analyze Diffie-Hellman. This is a protocol for exchanging of secure keys. So that is a protocol, I don't know. We really need to analyze the detail. I think that all this is just embedded in a phrase, so we cannot extrapolate any useful information now in real time. Yeah, so it means that whoever did the analysis added all the context, so we need just to do a semantic analysis later. The other question is that how should be the technical requirement be defined? So this is a question that we wanted to ask a little bit of more background. So if you had if you were supposed to specify that security control, how would you define it? What is the main characteristic of the security control? And so this is what we wanted to learn from that question. And I think that there are also a lot of answers that will be useful for us, for PT2, for everybody when we share the result, and also from the NUI that can learn through this output. And here we have 72 response. We can go to the next one. So we have a risk and rational scenario. So when you apply the security control, you need to tell me what is the rational. Why did you apply that security control? Usually this is something that you need to know before you apply that. But of course, this was also to verify that the assumption from the NUI were correct, or there is something more to add, or some characteristic that we didn't capture in the risk assessment, some characteristic that I didn't capture in my presentation. And so this is the learning process that I want to trigger. It was challenge also for you to be into this workshop. I mean, because there are a lot of information to be processed. Some of this information were new for you, but the advantage is that you can add a new fresh perspective to all this process. And so thank you so much for all this. And then we had the evaluation methodology. Jesus touched on this because he said we need to have a way to calibrate and to have two lab or two manufacturer doing the testing and have the same result. This is practically impossible, but we need to find what is the right balance to have the right level for evaluation methodology. When you define the security control, we ask you, how will you test it? And so we are curious also to see. We have a 53 response, and I think that we can get a lot of insights on this, and so a lot of reflection. Here we have also interesting. I wanted to check also the state of the art. We are for sure not creating the standard from scratch. We are starting with 18,031. We are also referring to ETSI 300-3645, 62443, and other standard. What we ask here is, what is the relevance of this standard? And I see here that 18,031, of course, had most of the answer. We build up on that. But I was curious also to see the prioritization for other standards that are listed here. And even if there were others. Also here, maybe if we can open others, I'm interested to see. So here there is ELC level 2, then UCC, 624442, this is specific. Yeah. I see that there is also some description, but NIST, I don't see totally new, because there is also NIST 2. NIST 2 is not a standard, it is a regulation, so there is a little bit of confusion, but we will analyze also this data, and then we of course, we will clean it up, and we will keep the relevant data. We will give you the raw but we will summarize what is relevant for the process. After the case study, what will you consider the challenge and the difficulty? We asked this question because we wanted to see, okay, you had discussion on the table, and we wanted to get what were the discussion that you consume a lot of time. I heard the RDPS or other topic, and so I'm very curious here to extrapolate some of this challenge. But I hear you see device, risk, difficulty. So here is difficult to extrapolate really in the cloud of word what is the meaning, because I guess that here there is a long sentence. The latest is 66 response to once you consider, you discuss about this challenge and difficulties, how would you solve it? So what are your conclusion? What did you learn about that? And this is where we can do more reflection, get your viewpoint, and then understanding how we can integrate this viewpoint inside our development process. So apart from that, there are other questions. Okay, so I think that we are also on time because it's 4:40, but again, a reminder, 1 week after, we will still ask for feedback. There will be also an email with the feedback on the event to understand how we perform or if we can improve something like UNE, like Senelec, and so on. And then at the end, we will publish raw data and we will make available a summary of what are the key points of today. So I think that now I will hand over to Yanis for the closure note. And thank you so much for all your effort and also for your time and your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have the... Do you have it? 1 second. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here, for working that hard. At the beginning, I thought that we're going to have a bombardment of questions, but I was met with peace and quiet, if you want, and that means that everything went smooth and very efficient. So I would like your attention because now I will give you a small presentation of what are the next steps for the CRA standardization development. And if you are interested and inspired from the workshop today on how to actually contribute and join the work effort. So let me start with how is the work organized real quick. As you might know, the standards are developed in technical committees. Each technical committee, TC from now on, has specific working groups that work on a dedicated scope. In order, actually first, the work program once again, as you can see in the second column, you can find all the TCs responsible for every topic based on the line from the first column. With once again, the topics, the titles, and the deadlines. Now, besides the work on the horizontal standards that you worked here today, also the people online, Senelec and ETSI are also developing product-specific standards, as you know, lines 16 until 41. Specifically, we create important products class 1 and class 2 and critical products, also explained by Felipe and from in the beginning. That's why you might be interested in the work of CENTIC 224 for personal identification related personal devices. They already work on important product class standards on line 16, hardware devices, line 31, 41B. Also, the work of ETSI is on the work program, and you can find out they have a range of portfolio and a range of standards that they work. Same for the Senelec TC 47X. They also work on important product class 1s, critical products as well, 65X, and the JTC 13 working group 6. Now, how to join the work. And that's very important. If you want to join the work of Senelec, you have to go, it's mandatory, you have to go through the Senelec national standardization bodies or national committees from the members, from the 34 countries that are members in Senelec. So basically, the participation, as I said, takes place only through the national members. Like in any form of participation, in any form of contribution, you have to go through the NSBs or NSCs. So it should, like when you want to contribute, and if you want to contribute, you have to think, do I have a headquarter in Europe? Am I based in Europe? And if yes, then in which country? For example, France. Then you have to, if you are based in France, you have to contact the French NSB or NC, which is AFNOR. Oh, sorry, AFNOR. The same in Spain. If you're based in Spain, you have to go to UNE. I think this presentation will be circulated. So we have two different links for the overview of all the SEN members and the Senelec members. Once again, if you go to the work program, you can see which topics are from SEN, which topics are from Senelec. Every NSB and every NC has their own website with their own processes. So you have to contact them to contribute to the general work program. And we compiled here very useful links for you to be onboarded with the general work of the CRA. A very good start would be Stand4CR, our homepage that has all the information that you might need in order to be onboarded. And it also has our contact points as well, the work of every TC, and a quick guide on how to join if you have even more questions. We have the Senelec page for the CRA with the work program. Once again, the community list of the NSBs from SEN, the NCs from Senelec, and the events that we have done in the past and the to-come events in the Cyberstand webpage. This is the Stand4CR. In case you have any questions, please visit this. One second. Visit this, and then if you have even more, please do not be afraid to contact us, and we can assist you to the best of our abilities in order to join our work. Oops, before the, yeah. So thank you very much. Enjoy your time in Madrid. But first, we have one question over there. Maybe I can give you the microphone.
So polite. Thank you very much. First of all, my name is Sufyan Al-Sous from IOCTR. I want to thank you all for your good workshop today and your hospitality. I don't know it in English very well. But anyway, it was a very good and successful meeting today. I have two suggestions, if it is possible. First one is to have a photo together, because we will never meet in this age anytime more. Number two, just to make a certificate for this workshop for us by email or whatever, if it is possible, that we attend this this workshop. Thank you very much.
Yes, actually, this is a very, very good feedback, and we welcome it in general. And this is something that we can discuss with UNE and figure it out. But that's a very good idea. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the time in Madrid. Have fun.